Imagine waking up to the shock that your country has just pulled out of a groundbreaking climate deal, and now the world is watching, outraged, confused, and waiting for answers. This isn't a sci-fi plot, it's happening now. Stay tuned as we uncover the truth behind Biden's radical move and what it means for America and the world. Welcome to our deep dive analysis of one of the most controversial policy shifts in recent memory. Today, we're breaking down the decision by the United States to exit a major international climate deal, a deal that had promised to deliver billions in green energy funding to developing nations. In this video, we will explore the background of the agreement, why the United States has chosen to withdraw, and most importantly, what President Biden's real plan is behind this sudden change in direction. This isn't just about environmental policy. It's about global politics, international relations, and the future of our planet. Over the next few minutes, we'll dissect every aspect of this decision, its implications for America, its impact on global climate initiatives, and the ripple effects on economies around the world. Let's start with some context. The climate deal in question was designed as a comprehensive international agreement to assist developing countries in transitioning from coal and fossil fuels to green energy. Under this pact, wealthy nations, including the United States, committed to providing substantial financial aid, technical assistance, and investment in renewable energy infrastructure. The deal had several key components. Billions of dollars were to be allocated for building renewable energy projects in developing nations. This funding was aimed at helping these countries reduce their carbon footprint and embrace sustainable development. Advanced technologies for solar, wind, and other renewable energy forms were to be shared, ensuring that even the least developed countries could harness clean energy. All participating nations agreed to specific emission reduction targets, with a timeline to achieve net zero carbon emissions. These targets were ambitious, but necessary to combat the escalating impacts of climate change. A core principle of the agreement was to address the disproportionate effects of climate change on poorer nations and communities. By funneling resources and expertise where they were needed most, the deal aimed to promote a more equitable global transition to sustainability. For many, this agreement symbolized hope, a unified effort to tackle one of the greatest challenges of our time. It was a testament to international cooperation in the face of a crisis that knows no borders. Now, let's discuss the recent decision. Just a few days ago, in a move that stunned both allies and critics alike, the United States announced its withdrawal from the climate deal. This decision has sparked outrage and bewilderment on the global stage. But what prompted this drastic move? According to multiple sources and insider accounts, the withdrawal is not an abrupt policy reversal without reason. Instead, it is part of a broader strategic shift under the Biden administration. Here are the main points behind the decision. The Biden administration has argued that America must focus on its domestic challenges first. With rising energy demands, economic pressures, and political polarization, the government believes that channeling resources inward is necessary to stabilize the economy and secure jobs. Critics, however, argue that such an inward focus may come at the expense of global leadership on climate issues. One of the key criticisms of the climate deal was the enormous financial burden it placed on the United States. While the intent was to support developing nations, many American policymakers and business leaders contended that the economic costs were too high, especially during times of fiscal uncertainty. The argument is that while investing in green technology is vital, doing so at the expense of domestic infrastructure and industry might backfire. There is a growing sentiment within certain political circles that this move could help rally support among voters who feel neglected by international commitments. By stepping back from global obligations, the administration might be positioning itself as prioritizing America First policies, an appeal to those who believe that the country should not shoulder the financial and political burdens of global agreements. The Biden administration claims that withdrawing from the deal does not signal a retreat from environmental responsibility. Instead, it is part of a plan to renegotiate the terms of global climate cooperation from a position that better serves American interests. This move is meant to recalibrate global expectations and perhaps create a new framework that balances international obligations with domestic needs. The decision to exit the climate deal has sent shockwaves through international circles. Let's look at how different regions and key players have responded. Many developing countries, which stood to benefit greatly from the climate deal, have expressed deep disappointment and anger. For these nations, the promised financial aid was not just a matter of environmental sustainability, but also a lifeline for economic development and social progress. The withdrawal has raised concerns about future investments in green technology and has left many leaders wondering if the United States still values its commitments to global equity. The European Union, often seen as a leader in global climate action, has been quick to criticize the decision. European leaders argue that the U.S. withdrawal undermines the collective efforts needed to combat climate change. They stress that global cooperation is essential to address an issue that affects every corner of the world. Some EU representatives have even called for a re-examination of international agreements to ensure that all major players are committed to the fight against global warming. China, a major player in both global trade and climate politics, is carefully watching the unfolding situation. While Chinese officials have not issued a direct statement condemning the U.S. decision, analysts believe that Beijing may see this as an opportunity to position itself as a more reliable partner in the global climate movement. By stepping in to fill the void left by the U.S., China could potentially enhance its soft power and influence among developing nations. Around the world, environmental activists and non-governmental organizations have voiced their concerns. Social media is abuzz with hashtags demanding accountability and urging governments to honor their commitments to combat climate change. These groups argue that the U.S. withdrawal represents a setback in the global fight against environmental degradation, with potentially catastrophic long-term consequences. While some sectors in the United States are relieved by the decision, viewing it as a means to protect domestic industries, others worry about the broader implications. Investors and businesses involved in renewable energy and sustainable technologies fear that the withdrawal could dampen momentum for green investments, both domestically and internationally. With the dramatic exit from the climate deal, the burning question now is, what is President Biden's real plan? Is this merely a short-term tactical move, or is it indicative of a broader strategy to reshape America's approach to environmental policy? One of the core elements of Biden's strategy appears to be a renewed emphasis on domestic green energy initiatives. Instead of committing vast sums of money abroad, the administration is looking to invest heavily in American renewable energy projects. This includes upgrading infrastructure to support solar, wind, and geothermal power, expanding federal incentives for the development of clean technologies, creating new jobs in the green energy sector to stimulate the economy. The argument is that by focusing on homegrown solutions, the United States can not only reduce its carbon emissions, but also lead by example in the global transition to sustainable energy. Another key aspect of the new plan is to realign trade policies with environmental goals. By withdrawing from the international deal, the administration may be positioning itself to negotiate new terms that are more favorable to American interests. This could involve bilateral agreements with key trading partners that incorporate both economic and environmental objectives, developing standards that promote green technology exports while protecting domestic industries, ensuring that any future international agreements allow for flexibility in addressing local economic realities. President Biden has repeatedly stated that the United States remains committed to fighting climate change. However, the administration seems to believe that the current global frameworks are outdated and do not adequately reflect the complexities of modern geopolitics. The exit from the deal is therefore seen as a first step in redefining what global climate leadership should look like in the 21st century. Future proposals might include a new multilateral framework that involves both developed and developing nations in a more balanced manner, emphasizing innovation and technological advancements as the primary drivers of environmental progress, fostering partnerships that combine economic growth with environmental sustainability. No discussion of major policy shifts is complete without considering the political landscape. Critics argue that Biden's decision is as much about domestic politics as it is about environmental policy. With upcoming elections on the horizon, this move could be aimed at reassuring conservative voters who have long opposed what they see as excessive foreign spending, strengthening the America First narrative in an era where globalism is increasingly questioned, setting the stage for a political rebranding that differentiates Biden's approach from previous administrations. It's important to note that while some view this as a bold strategic maneuver, others see it as a dangerous departure from America's long-standing role as a leader in global climate efforts. Now let's zoom out and consider the international fallout. America's withdrawal from the climate deal has several profound implications. Many developing countries were counting on the promised financial aid and technological support to accelerate their transition to green energy. With the U.S. stepping back, these nations may face significant setbacks in their efforts to combat climate change. The loss of billions of dollars in funding could delay critical infrastructure projects, force governments to seek alternative, potentially less favorable partnerships, increase reliance on fossil fuels in the short term, thereby exacerbating global emissions. The intersection of trade policy and environmental action is a delicate balance. America's exit from the deal could lead to a reordering of global trade alliances as countries adjust their policies in response to the new reality. Increased volatility in energy markets as investors react to the uncertainty surrounding green investments. New economic opportunities for nations that are prepared to step into the leadership vacuum left by the U.S. The climate deal was more than just a financial agreement. It was a symbol of global unity in the face of an existential threat. The U.S. withdrawal might undermine the credibility of international climate negotiations, encourage other nations to reconsider their commitments, leading to a domino effect of retrenchment, spark the creation of alternative coalitions and frameworks that either exclude or challenge the United States leadership. One potential silver lining is that America's renewed focus on domestic green energy could accelerate innovation. By investing more heavily in local research, development, and deployment of renewable technologies, the U.S. might create cutting-edge solutions that can eventually be exported globally, spur a new wave of public-private partnerships that drive down the cost of renewable energy, position itself as a leader in next-generation climate technologies, even if it is no longer part of the old international. The withdrawal is likely to have lasting diplomatic consequences. Allies who have long counted on U.S. leadership in climate matters might seek to forge closer ties with other major players like the European Union or China, reassess their own policies and commitments in light of America's changing stance, use this shift as a bargaining chip in future international negotiations on a wide range of issues, from trade to security. One of the most debated questions is whether this decision represents a temporary tactical maneuver or a fundamental long-term reorientation of U.S. policy. Some analysts believe that the withdrawal is merely a short-term tactic designed to address immediate domestic pressures. Under this view, the Biden administration is seeking to redirect resources toward critical domestic projects. This move might be reversed or renegotiated once the domestic situation stabilizes. Politically, it serves to shore up support among constituencies that have long opposed international spending on climate deals. On the other hand, many experts argue that this decision signals a broader and more permanent shift in American foreign and environmental policy. Supporters of this perspective point to the administration's detailed plans for a new domestic green energy initiative, a clear emphasis on recalibrating America's role on the world stage, one that prioritizes national interests and economic stability over broad international commitments. The possibility that this move could redefine global climate negotiations, forcing a new era of multilateral cooperation that better accounts for the diverse economic and political realities of the 21st century. Regardless of the long-term outlook, the decision is already influencing domestic political debates. Critics on both sides of the aisle are weighing in, Progressive voices are concerned that abandoning international commitments could damage America's moral standing and lead to greater environmental degradation worldwide. Conservative groups, meanwhile, are applauding the move as a necessary step to protect American jobs and economic interests. As the election cycle heats up, this topic is likely to become a focal point in political ads, debates, and media coverage, further complicating the landscape for both Biden and his opponents. So, what exactly does President Biden plan to do next? While the full details of the new strategy are still emerging, here's what we know so far. The administration is poised to roll out a massive investment package focused on upgrading America's energy infrastructure. This includes building new renewable energy plants and upgrading the electrical grid, offering tax incentives and grants to businesses and homeowners who install solar panels, wind turbines, and other green technologies, partnering with local governments and private companies to create sustainable energy hubs across the country. By withdrawing from the international climate deal, the administration is signaling its intention to renegotiate trade policies in a way that integrates environmental objectives with economic benefits. Future initiatives could involve formulating bilateral agreements with key allies that offer both financial and technical support for renewable projects, imposing stricter environmental standards on imported goods while offering incentives for green exports, using trade negotiations as a platform to set new global benchmarks for sustainability that are more aligned with American interests. A major part of Biden's roadmap is to position the United States as a global leader in green technology. Plans include increasing funding for research and development in renewable energy and carbon capture technologies, encouraging collaboration between universities, tech companies, and government agencies to spur innovation, creating new programs that train workers for jobs in the renewable energy sector, ensuring that America's workforce is ready for the future. Although the U.S. has withdrawn from the current deal, it is not abandoning international climate efforts altogether. Instead, the plan is to engage in new partnerships that provide more flexibility and better reflect the economic realities of all parties involved. Allow the United States to set the agenda for future climate initiatives on its own terms. Strengthen diplomatic ties by offering alternative models of cooperation that blend economic growth with environmental sustainability. The administration is aware that this decision has stirred controversy both at home and abroad. As part of its strategy, Biden plans to hold a series of press conferences and congressional hearings to explain the rationale behind the withdrawal, engage with international leaders to reassure them of America's commitment to global environmental goals, launch public outreach campaigns to build support among American citizens, and dispel misconceptions about the decision. The challenge for the Biden administration now is to balance national interests with global responsibilities. This is no small feat, and it requires careful planning, transparent communication, and most importantly, effective implementation. The decision to exit the climate deal is rooted in the need to address immediate domestic challenges. However, it is equally important to maintain America's long-term role as a responsible global citizen. This balancing act will involve setting clear, measurable goals for domestic renewable energy production, continuing to contribute to global climate research and innovation, even if the financial commitments are scaled back. Building a narrative that shows how domestic strength and global leadership are not mutually exclusive, but can reinforce each other. In the coming months, we are likely to see a flurry of diplomatic activity as other nations respond to the U.S. move. Key diplomatic challenges include reassuring allies that America's withdrawal is not a sign of retreat, but a strategic pivot, negotiating new frameworks for climate cooperation that accommodate the changing global economic landscape, mitigating potential backlash from countries that were depending on U.S. support to advance their green energy agendas. While critics warn of short-term economic disruptions, there is also a significant opportunity here. By reorienting its investments, the United States can stimulate job growth in the renewable energy sector, position American companies as leaders in next-generation clean technologies, create a more resilient economy that is less dependent on fossil fuels and more adaptable to future environmental challenges. No policy shift is complete without considering the sentiments of the people it affects. Public opinion on the climate deal withdrawal is divided. A significant segment of the American population, especially those concerned about the country's fiscal health and job security, see this move as a necessary realignment of priorities. They argue, the United States cannot afford to shoulder the burden of international obligations when domestic issues like infrastructure, healthcare, and education demand immediate attention. Redirecting funds toward local renewable energy projects will yield long-term economic benefits. This is a pragmatic decision that protects American interests in a volatile, global economic landscape. On the other hand, environmental groups, progressive politicians, and many young voters view the withdrawal as a betrayal of America's long-standing commitment to fighting climate change. Their concerns include the U.S. is relinquishing its leadership role at a time when global cooperation is needed more than ever. Withdrawing from the deal could embolden other countries to backslide on their environmental commitments, leading to a global setback in climate action. The long-term environmental costs of not investing in global green initiatives could far outweigh any short-term economic gains. The reaction to this decision has further polarized an already divided nation. As election season approaches, this issue is becoming a flashpoint for political debate. Political analysts predict that the decision will be a major talking point in upcoming campaign rallies, debates, and media discussions. How the Biden administration communicates and justifies its strategy in the coming weeks will be crucial in shaping public opinion. Voter turnout and engagement on this issue could have lasting implications on future elections, particularly among swing voters and younger demographics who prioritize climate action. As we wrap up our deep dive into America's exit from a major climate deal, let's recap the key points. The climate deal was designed to transform global energy policies by supporting developing nations with funding and technology for renewable energy. It represented a collective effort to tackle climate change head-on, emphasizing international cooperation and environmental justice. The United States, under President Biden's administration, has decided to exit the deal. This decision is driven by a combination of domestic economic priorities, political strategy, and a desire to reshape America's role in global climate initiatives. The withdrawal has sparked mixed reactions worldwide. Developing nations are disappointed and fearful of the economic and environmental fallout, while European allies and global environmentalists criticize the move. Domestically, the decision is polarizing, with significant debates over its long-term benefits versus short-term gains. Rather than a retreat from environmental responsibility, this move is part of a broader strategy to invest in domestic green energy infrastructure. Revamp trade policies to align economic interests with environmental goals. Foster technological innovation in renewable energy. Redefine America's role in international climate cooperation through new, more balanced frameworks. The coming months will be critical. The administration will need to demonstrate that the shift in strategy will yield tangible benefits for the American people while ensuring that the global fight against climate change remains robust. Diplomatic negotiations, economic recalibrations, and a reinvigorated domestic investment in green technology will be key to realizing this vision. In closing, while the decision to exit the climate deal has sent shockwaves through the international community, it also opens up a new chapter in America's approach to both environmental policy and global leadership. As citizens, policymakers, and global observers, we must now watch closely to see how these bold moves reshape our world. Thank you for joining us as we explored the complex and far-reaching implications of America's recent policy shift. This isn't just about one decision, It's about how our nation will navigate the intersection of domestic priorities and global responsibilities in a rapidly changing world. Stay tuned for more updates as we continue to monitor this story and uncover how these decisions will impact not only the future of our planet, but the lives of millions of people worldwide. If you found this analysis informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth coverage of the issues that matter most. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think this move will ultimately benefit America, or will it further isolate the U.S. on the global stage? We want to hear from you. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.